billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I'm your host Hajra Sati and joining me is my co-host Ali. Assalamu alaikum Ali. How are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum Hajra and assalamu alaikum. A very welcome to World This Morning. How are you Hajra?
Alhamdulillah, and since the temperature is dropping in Islamabad, we certainly feel the cold and I think this is truly how November should be, right? Because for the past couple of days we were feeling the heat and now certainly we're feeling the transition to the winter.
Exactly.
And with that changes, you can also feel the changes in your skin because the dryness is coming, seeping in.
The skin has become cracky, but I think on the brighter side as well, the weather is actually becoming better, but you know, for patients of asthma and those who have allergy, the weather is not conducive. I must say that.
That's very true, and that is because of the mulberry trees that are planted in the Islamabad, and their proliferation has certainly led to the spike in the asthma cases. But obviously, people who are suffering from this condition, they need to be very careful because they're going to get these asthma attacks as we witness the transition into the winter season. But now let's move on to our top stories because we have some very interesting news on our table, which is about the International Bird Festival was held in Pakistan China Center in Islamabad. People from different walks of life participated and enjoyed the festival. And I really like the lovebirds. Ali, I really don't know about you, but when I was a young kid, we used to have it. But then later my mother told me that you should not capture these birds because freedom is something, this is not just desired or craved by the human beings alone, but by all of the beings. And certainly animals can't voice themselves properly, but obviously the agency of the freedom and liberty is a great thing.
Definitely Hajra, I must say that, you know, animals, they cannot really voice, but if you really are an empathetic person and you know how to communicate, definitely animals, they have the ability. Each and everything that is biotic has the ability to communicate with you, be it the animals, the birds, the plants, everything. So, you know, animals, they actually have the feelings and they do portray their feelings.
That's very true, and thank you so much for saying that because every, I would say, being has a different way of communicating. For example, our communication with God is usually the silent communication.
Exactly.
And it's not that we do not understand what is happening because silence is a very powerful language to communicate, and communication is not just the verbal communication, non-verbal communication is also a
And I believe since, you know, we are in this platform where we are communicating with our audiences, so, you know, communication is important, but effective communication is of paramount importance where, you know, the message is effectively decoded by the audiences.
That's very true, and since we both of us belongs to the communications background, but one of my professors used to say that the development or the evolution of the language has done biggest harm to humanity because it is often the miscommunication that leads to the conflict, and that has created so much chaos around the world.
What a bittersweet reality.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And now moving on to another very interesting news in which the record of serving noodles in the biggest cup was made by a Chinese company, and that are the world's largest instant noodles in the cup. Luangqi Luwabing Food Technology Corporation distributed these longest serving noodles in their canteen cafeteria, And I don't know, Ali, but are you fond of Maggi noodles or instant noodles?
Actually, I was about to ask you because, you know, I'm a die-hard fan of these Maggi noodles, the Kannauр noodles, and especially, did you happen to try the Korean noodles as well?
No, not at all.
I mean, they are insanely spicy, but, you know, one should definitely try them.
Right, but I'm not that fan of noodles, but lots of people, especially around the world, they find they satiate their desire in the noodles because they're instant, they can be cooked easily, but obviously that's a very interesting record to set to be made. But now,
well, let me ask you this one thing, other than noodles, did you happen to have eaten squids? Are you a seafood fan?
Yeah,
I happened to...
I had fish, but not squid.
I had squids for the first time in my life.
How were they?
They were actually very scary in their appearance, but the way they were scary, they were so delicious.
Okay, but people are really fond of the seafood because seafood tastes really good and they have
This
lots
is
of
true.
nutritional
And
benefits
especially
to
when
it.
they're accompanied by noodles in the hot pot, if
Yes,
I talk
yes,
about.
yes, yes. So now we move on to our first segment, which is about the education reforms and the literature. And literature is something that fascinates me as a subject because I'm heavily invested into the book reading, and I think I have to say the same about Ali here. So without any further ado, we would like to introduce our guest who has so many feathers in his cap. He was not just a registrar, he has just been appointed the registrar of the Medina International University. He was the HOD of the linguistic department. He was also the HOD of the law department. He has authored 5 books on the grammar, English grammar. He's an educationist, he's an author, and he has a long list which credits him for his qualities, for his accomplishments. And of course, we would like to introduce him because he happens to be Muhammad Javed Aslam Bajwa. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show. Okay, so there's some technical problem. Our team is trying to get in contact with them. But since Ali, you also invested into the literature. So can I ask you what sort of literature do you read? What sort of books or genre are you fascinated to?
Well, you know, Hajra, there was a time in my life, unfortunately, right now, in my recent past,
Yes.
I had not been a very happy reader of the literature, but if I talk about my university life, I was a very fond reader of Khalid Hosseini.
Oh, wonderful.
And A Thousand Splendid Suns, if you've read the
Yes,
book.
yes,
I
I
mean,
did.
it is such a fine portrayal of the Afghan culture, the miseries they went through, and you know, all the down and the up and down
But
of
I beg to disagree with you, and I do feel that the authors who are writing about the South Asia or South Asian culture, and especially the authors who are residing in the West, they have a very particular lens through which they portray that particular culture, right?
I must agree.
And
I
in
must
Khalid
agree.
Hosseini's
And
books, all of these
they can actually you know, describe that whole culture with a specific and a limited, you know, horizon.
it's limited to the lens of terrorism, and that is what
Exactly.
spites me a lot because I think that that culture is much more than the terrorism.
It's
because
very
there's-
diverse. It's very
Yes,
diverse
yes.
because, you know, unfortunately,
Radicalization,
we don't get to read
polarization,
about you know, the
fragmented societies.
indigenous cultures, the subcultures which are there, their practices, their food, their customs, their norms. So I think there is much more to every culture other than those specific things that we read in those books.
Right, that is why I have particular problem because the way, the lens through which they portray the cultures of the South Asia is limited to the terrorism, fragmentation, polarization, extremism, how society is so much radicalized and it is divided on the religious lines, and I think our cultures are much more than that, and that is why I started reading. I have read that book and I have read his other books, but I do find that again, they are very self-limiting, and I think we need to explore more horizons.
That's
and that
very
lens
true.
needs
But
to
you know,
be broken.
Hajra, if I talk about one book in your life.
I'm really sorry I have to interject here, Ali, but we are very glad that we have been joined by our guest, Mr. Muhammad Javed Aslam Bajwa Sahab. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Ji wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Right. So, Javed Saab, since you have so many feathers in your caps and you have been authors of the 5 books, would you like to elaborate to our audiences what were your books written about and why did you find the need to fill that gap in the literature?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much. My main focus was first of all on teaching English language to the learners, and my initial work was on grammatical structures and grammatical works and compositional work, and so that the people may learn how to read and how to write and how to speak and how to ease in the society as English spoken people. Then I shifted myself to reform myself in a sense that I observe what have been I doing in the society around and what the people have been doing around me. And when I realized that in certain areas I'm mistaken and I ought to have certain norms and manners of the society which are preferably the better one and which were actually the objectives of the creation of a human person, so human man. So then I shifted myself and I made my mind to have the themes and the objectives on which I may have a qualitative sense and knowledge and produce my inner sense that perhaps I have refined myself and
Right,
I
right,
have
right, sir. So we've been witnessing, and I think in the last 3 or 4 years, I have very staunchly observed this thing, especially among the young students, is that this momentum of book reading is slowly declining, and a lot of people, especially in this 21st century, in this digital age, they are predicting the death of the book, because the rationale behind is that lots of people are getting the news or information from social media, which is very shortened sentences. It's not a very disjointed narrative that is being presented on the social media. And I'm pretty sure, since you have a very extensive experience in the teaching, so how do you see this transition? Do you also feel that there is a decline of book reading among the younger generation, and how it was not a very defining or permanent feature back in the old days? What do you have to say about it?
Yes, of course. There are certain merits on which we have to evaluate your narrative. One is reading for what? Number one, people don't have time to have the long narrative readings,
Yes,
therefore they have come to
yes,
Mithi reading
yes.
and to screen reading only, of course. Secondly, what is the purpose of reading? If that is meant for entertainment. So entertainment is available on internet and certain other features. Therefore, people don't go for reading long books and purchasing the books. The books are available,
True.
and the pithy stories are available on the internet. Therefore, people go for that, and they don't meant for reading. Third, uh, they don't have taste for, they don't have time for, especially in Pakistan. The majority is from the middle class or from the below middle class. Therefore, most of the people don't have readability and they don't feel need of reading. Therefore, they don't need entertainment. They go for the cheap entertainments and the general entertainment, or the physical entertainments and the games and etc. Therefore, they don't indulge in libraries, indulge in reading clubs, and certain other activities which are beneficial for, or which are considered to be beneficial and healthy activities for the society.
True.
Therefore, the declining trend is because of the lack of the interest of the people, high prices of the books. People have no time. They have all the time busy in their earnings and earning their livelihoods. That's why the decline in reading has been observed very drastically and sharply.
Right, so you alluded to the point that the library culture is declining and people don't like to go to the libraries, or the libraries, they are, I mean, how do you say it, people do not frequent them that much. And similarly, we see whenever the new book is released, it gets to the bookshop, and people, instead of going or walking into the library, they go to the bookshop and buy the book from there. It does have certain merits, but how, as a professor, as someone who is invested in the literature, how do you think we can make this library culture more vibrant? Because as students, we do need lots of research paper, articles, and I think Ali also agrees with me that libraries are certainly a good source of getting the literature.
Definitely.
Uh, you are right to a great extent, but first of all, we must have the people to taste literature. We must present them certain activity that we have this literary festival in Islamabad recently.
Yes.
Then it was in Karachi. It was, of course, on a small scale in Faisalabad last year. So we must produce a taste to the people, not only reading, but also that is the performances based on literature, so that the people may know what literature is and how much clothed its life is, and how much necessary study of literature is to have a very comfortable and successful life. Therefore, we first of all produce such activities and invite the people, rather ask the people to come and join, so that they may have a taste, and then when they would have a taste, definitely the libraries would be live as they used to be in our use time, and sometimes we didn't have enough space in libraries, even in the biggest libraries in those days, and
Right.
they were all the time open till late at night. But nowadays people don't have. Only those people who are just going for CSS preparations or other
Yes.
competitive examinations, they go there only for a purpose, not for a taste, not for literature's sake, not for literature for life's sake, not for literature for entertainment's sake, neither to learn, need to guide. This is not the objective of today's man when he is involved in literature or he observes literature.
Right.
That's why my suggestion is that the literary people and the literary status must come forward and have all these sort of activities, and this is the only remedy to have peace and tranquility and calm in society.
Right, right. Of course, you happen to be an educationist as well, and you have introduced some very important reforms as well. So, talking about this thing, which I definitely agree that it has become a purpose only, and people have lost interest, Hajra, unfortunately.
True. That's
So,
true.
what reforms can we introduce in the education sector, in the literature side, so that we can inculcate interest in the minds and hearts of people?
My point of view is, and my outcome of the experience of my whole life is that the literature which was being produced in our society, first of all, that was the foreign literature that was not in harmony with our culture, customs, practices,
True.
and rituals. That's why most of the people were not in tune with that literature. I do hope that if we produce literature based on the moral values, the ethics, and the needs of the current society in which we are living, as we find when our writers go to UK and
Yes.
America and they produce as a diaspora, their writings are very successful as they harmonize with the society and they produce literature what is required over there. But here the dilemma is that we are not producing the literature which is harmonized with our culture, with our norms, with our rituals, with our society. That's why now I'm taking this initiative, and now my coming books are about on all those themes which are Pakistani, which are pro-Islamic, which are relevant to the culture of Southeast Asia.
Right.
And I do think that the literature like that would produce harmony and interest as well for the readers.
Right. Sir, do you think that today's literature somehow has been influenced by the Western literature? Because if we talk about the literature, the Urdu literature that was written in the 60s, 70s, if I talk about Shahabnama, if I talk
Yes.
about Ashfaq Ahmad Zavia,
Ismat
so
Chughtai.
exactly.
Yes.
So that was under the pure Eastern influence. But now
Yes.
somehow even the Eastern writers, the Pakistani writers, somehow I believe that they idealize the Western culture, the Western practices. So
True.
how fortunate or unfortunate do you think this is?
And then there is this element of commercialization in that their books
True.
are going to be more receptive among the Western audiences or the audiences among the Pakistani people because they are written, like we were talking about, through the lens of terrorism or fragmentation or extremely polarized society. What West wants to hear about our society, not what is the actual or the true representation. So how to break this monopoly and have the true representation of our culture?
You are very true. I will quote two examples. When I was a student of PhD in Namal, I asked one of my teachers, a very learned one, double PhD, that why has he produced a book with a pseudonym that is a lady when the book was published in England and why not in Pakistan? He told me pathetically that there is no readability of English books over here in Pakistan. Secondly, when he is producing an English book, he should have readability and acceptability. That's why he has adopted a pseudonym that is a lady's name, a feminine name, and he has produced this book, got published this book from England. So this is one other dilemma that we try to have some sort of techniques like this. Second thing is, which you have mentioned, that the themes which are the local themes, those must be highlighted. A
Right.
soft image of Pakistan
Yes.
and our
Yes.
society must be produced to the world
True.
so that they may know that we are peace lovers. We are Muslim,
Very
and
true.
our theme is that we are the peace lovers, and our objective is to promote peace everywhere. We have nothing to do with terrorism.
That's
We
true.
have
True.
nothing to
That's
do.
very right.
That's very right, and thank you so much, sir, for pointing it out very succinctly. And can we ask about your next ventures of your book? What sort of books are you writing, and what should we expect from your literary creation?
I have now segregated the 400 Adis Mubaraka of the Holy Prophet that are in
Sallallahu
dialogue forms,
Right.
so that people may understand and comprehend in dialogue
Right.
forms what our Holy Prophet used to say. Then I have segregated into three main topics, and my next three books are coming on those topics. And first book is that is Amaliyat, that is to provoke on activity.
Right.
Second thing is very, very defined aspects of Prophet's life that is delightful and that they are very personal among his family, among his friends, so that we may know our Prophet used to lead a life like this.
Sallallahu
Third thing is that when especially when I was a teacher of English language and literature, I used to have a Western outlook.
Right.
Then I realized that perhaps I am mistaken somewhere. Then this realization made me study the Holy Quran, the
Sallallahu
Hadith Mubarakah, the Sira,
Sallallahu
the role model, who is the role model for all. Then I am writing a book where that is actually what we call in Urdu talash, and that is inquisitiveness of my own self.
Right.
That this was the actually self, my being, and this is my real self. That is my the inner self, and what is actually desired and ought to be. And perhaps that would be an enlightening write-up for the people when that book will be published.
Right, right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, and we are wishing you best of luck for your literary adventures, and may your books be a great success. And we also would like to say that and I think one thing that we would like to say, and we would like our audiences to take away from this entire segment, is that keep yourself invested into the book reading.
True.
Any sort of literature, please go ahead into it and make sure that you have this hobby of reading at least 1 page, 2 page. This is also a good
True.
distraction from the social media if you want to detoxify yourself from the social media consumption.
Thank you for using the word
Yes.
detoxify. I think
Right.
it is something very accurate and people really need to do, because there is, I believe, a lot of toxicity where there is, there is a
Right,
lot
right.
of positivity over social media. There is a lot of toxicity as
Thank
well.
you for succinctly putting it out there. But since we're really short on time, thank you so much, Javed Saab, for being on our show, for having this wonderful exchange of ideas, of your knowledge, of your wisdom about the literature, about the books, and about the state of intellectual discourse in our society, in our country. And with that, we are going on a short break. And after we come back, we have a very interesting discussion lined up, and that is how women behind the lens are. So don't go anywhere. Good morning. Okay, welcome back. And since we are, before going on to the break, I alluded to the fact that we will talk about what women behind the lens look like. But since I would like to throw this question, or throw this, I would like him to take the lead because he wants to introduce our guest. Ali.
Well, today I'm very honored to introduce our guest, who happens to be my teacher as well. at the time when I was doing A-levels from Beacon House, Magla campus, and she had been a very strong advocate for the women empowerment. She is a very passionate learner, a very passionate teacher, and she happened to be a very passionate photographer as well. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's welcome Ms. Masuma Zubairi to our show. Madam, it is such an honor to have you, and a very, very warm welcome to World this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for always inviting me. Like a big shout out, and you know, I'm always overwhelmed on my introduction.
Right. Masuma has been a regular on our show, and it's always a delight to have her here, and delight to ears whenever she is speaking. So Masuma, women in photography, you have been in the photography, you're also teaching the kids photography. What sort of scope do you see nowadays, because since everyone has a very sophisticated mobile phone cameras and the people are clicking everywhere, the shots are everywhere, and I would say that this is a picture saturated century, because you see on the social media, Instagram, Snapchat, it's all about pictures, 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 right? So what is the scope of photography?
Well, I guess it all depends on your passion. The other day, I went to a student's home, and I was teaching her. She was so demotivated by everyone that, you know, she was fat, she wasn't looking good in the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, she was so demotivated about her studies. So I motivated her in a way that, you know, she was good in her taking angles and taking photography. So I just randomly told her, okay, why don't you start your own page and just start doing it? So when she shifted her attention towards that particular thing, her mood and everything was so changed that I can't explain in words.
Right, right.
So you know, that is how you motivate the youngsters, that how they can come out of this frustration of, you know, society, and
True.
you know, this force coming up to you that, you know, you're fat, you're not looking good, you can't marry. So, you know, come out of that zone, and, you know, you have to think out of your box what to do. So I think I've motivated a lot of students in my career, that, you know, if you're passionate enough to achieve something, it all depends on patience and passion. That's what I think.
I definitely remember that, you know, you were my teacher, and definitely a teacher for once is a teacher for always. But I remember
Thank
in
you.
2013 and in 2012 as well,
Wonderful.
you were someone who motivated students a lot, and I definitely remember that I was going through one of the low points in my life, and you were the one who motivated me a lot. So definitely, Hajra, as she mentioned, that this is a picture saturated century, and you know, people, they're very obsessed about, even I myself, I'm very obsessed about taking pictures, selfies, and you know, posting pictures of the food and the stuff. It's very important. But if we talk about the body shaming, as you've mentioned about your student, because you know, there are so many students these days, not just students, so many people who encounter body shaming.
I myself being targeted on this, so
Exactly. I mean, you know, if you're thin, they're going to say, oh, you're so thin, you're not looking nice.
Yes.
If you're fat, you're looking so fat, you're not looking nice.
Yes.
So how should we deal with this, since you are an educationist by yourself as well? So how can we tackle this whole situation?
First of all, you need to, you know, tell them. I'll be very honest. What I did when people used to, you know,
I mean,
tell me.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you right now, but I really want to hear your challenges that you have encountered in your life.
First of all, this body shaming thing, but yes, if you tell them talk to the hand, you need to be confident enough to tell them, okay, whatever I am, whoever I am, I'm confident enough and I will do it whatever I want to do. First of all, the confidence matters. Secondly, whatever you're doing, do it passionately, as earlier I said that.
True.
Third, just be whatever you are. Just don't be fake in front of people. A lot of people,
And
you know,
it's easily detectable, right?
Yeah.
If you're
If we talk about pictures and everything, people, you know, they use filters to, you know, look something different, look like, you know, maybe some actress or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
So just be whatever you are. Just be confident whoever you are.
Right. And pictures have since we belong to the field of journalism, Ali, and we've seen that pictures play a very important role in the news production, and we have seen back in the last century
pictures are the storytellers.
Yes, pictures worth 1,000 words, right? And we have seen that how wars were introduced because of the pictures, and pictures also lend legitimacy to the situation, to the words. But now with the introduction of artificial intelligence and with these softwares that are generating pictures, and they're so, I would say, real that your fake...
They're actually hyper-realistic.
Yes, your eyes can't detect that, but
Exactly.
algorithms can detect that fakeness in that picture. So, Masuma, do you feel threatened by these developments of artificial intelligence?
Because you know, some people predicted that you will be jobless if you you know, work with these kind of intelligence.
Yes.
So we need to be careful about our own jobs and everything, because you know, right now what I've experienced because of this whole technology and everything, whenever I give a question of media studies, all of my students, what they do is they type the question to AI and they say, oh ma'am, this is the answer of
They
the
can
question.
generate
So
pictures
this is
there, right?
exactly, exactly.
True.
So that's quite threatening.
That's threatening, and I think this is also eroding the mental faculties, because as teachers, as an educationist, people are really concerned about how the intellectual state of the younger students are, because they're not using their own faculties. Instead, they're hiring the artificial intelligence to do
True,
that,
true.
and that is real threat.
And Hajra, here I want to mention this one thing. I just realized this one thing all of a sudden, that you know, not every person who is having a DSLR camera is actually a photographer.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree with this?
I agree.
So what's
I
your
agree.
take on this, Madam
I
Masuma?
guess your mobile phone is good enough if you have a good aesthetic sense.
Exactly.
If you come out of your, if you think out of your box. I always tell my students, you need to come and think about something very different, and think from your box. I call this thing as a box.
Yeah, of course.
So
of course.
you know,
And I
you
think
will
there are ventilators here as well, so you need to open up your ventilators.
Yeah. So coming back towards the body shaming, so it's no big deal. You can use your camera to be a good, you know, photographer. If you, you know, it's just a tip for those who have, you know, experiencing body shaming. What you last time I did explain about this angle, like high angle. If you take your picture from high angle, you will look sleek. So I guess you can take the pictures like in different angles to look good in your pictures.
Right. And Masuma, since you're a photographer, you're an educationist, how do you see the future of this photography evolving?
I guess it's more generally I've seen more women coming into this field.
Okay.
But first it wasn't that you know
Inclusive, yes.
in the woman, as a woman coming as a photographer. But now when I see more girls coming up to me and telling me that we have to learn photography, and a lesser amount of men coming up and learning about photography, so there's a difference.
Right.
They feel safe, they feel good, they go out with me, they experience different, you know, different society, culture, and you know, they're learning up. So I guess it has a bright future.
So if I talk about women and the young girls who are very passionate about the photography and who are very inquisitive learners, so talking about the dynamics of Pakistan, the indigenous cultures, the subcultures, so how many girls from the conservative cultures they are approaching you for the photography? Because I happen to know this girl from our university at Nast Hajra, who was from Kohat, and she is a very accomplished photographer now, and she was featured by the Independent Urdu and some international platforms as well.
Wonderful.
Well, I went to Gilgit Baltistan, and I gave my you know, session there.
Right.
And out of that session, I took 2 students of my my session, and we motivated them, and they have their own studio right now in Islamabad.
Wow.
So that was a big
amazing.
achievement, you know, coming up with such area. Another bunch of you know, girls from Peshawar.
Right.
They came up to me and they had this whole session of photography, and out of those 10, I think 3 or 4 students are working on their companies.
Right.
So that's what I've achieved right now in Pakistan, considering these areas, the culture, and you know, the backward thinking that, you know, women can't do anything. But I guess
True.
and anyone can do anything.
That's very right. Anyone can do anything.
True.
And you know, when you really want to do something with your heart and with your mind, you know, my father, he says this one thing that, you know, all the energies of this whole universe, they help you in achieving that particular goal that you want to achieve. So, Madam Masooma, if I talk about that time of 80s and 90s when there were, you know, the reels, the camera reels, if I talk about, I think
We
it's
have
a
also
very
witnessed
nostalgic.
that. Yeah.
We used to have those toy cameras as well.
Yes,
The
yes.
disposable
Analog.
cameras, if I talk about.
I really don't know the name, but there was
I
this
think
black
it was
sort of
said
X-ray
it was
reels.
more like an analog camera.
Analog cameras,
It wasn't a
exactly.
digital
Because
camera.
I remember that my ma, she happened to be a journalist as well, and she was a
Mashallah.
very passionate learner of the photography. So she used to have this Canon A1 camera, and I used to ask her different things. So what's your take on that era of photography?
Well, I guess the awareness was very less at that time. The awareness, the digitization was very less at that time. But
Right.
still, you know, people have and you know been working and have been recognized on the international level. So yeah, again, it totally depends on the passion and the patience you have of learning.
Yes, and I think that camera was not accessible because everyone did not have it, and I think the
Exactly.
penetration of the smartphones and the
And I believe
cameras
it was
in
not
that
affordable
it's
as well, because it
yes,
was very expensive at that
yes,
time.
and now with the smartphone, everyone has the camera, everyone can click the picture. But when we talk about photography, Masooma, so we see that the privacy is also a big issue, right?
Indeed.
Because
Definitely.
anyone
Indeed.
can click your
True that.
pictures, anyone can take your videos, upload on the social media, which is an unrestrained territory, unrestrained, I would say, a public space affair in that sense. And so when you're teaching your kids, what sort of ethics do you tell them, especially when they want to click a picture, you know, what sort of consideration should we have and how sensitive we should be to our environment?
I think the first thing what I use and I totally do with my clients whenever they come and they tell us that you know they want to take pictures and everything, the consent is very important from anyone. That is
Right.
very important because you know we can't put anyone's picture on the social media.
True.
So in my terms and condition of my company, I always tell them, okay, please read the conditions because you know for the promotions I will use only the detailing of the picture, not if you don't want me to put your picture, I won't just you know sign the consentment form. So we usually you know we give them this form so that you know the client should be happy and we should be satisfied as well that you know we're not supposed to put the pictures on the social media. So I think consent is very important.
Right, and when you talk about consent, because it's a very debatable and interesting topic, so probably you're talking about the peacetime or the time when you can click the pictures, but when you talk about the war times or when you are covering the conflict area or a disaster prone area, so then how does the factor of the consent comes into that equation, because you want to portray that particular disaster or particular image to people out there, especially when we talk about in a journalistic sense, right? So how does then the consent comes into this entire debate?
Well, out of my experience, there was a blast in a university. I think it was back in 2008, and I was studying in that university.
Oh yeah.
And I was going for my thesis, and the blast happened, and I was just about to enter the university, and I took the picture, and that picture got viral in the university because that was very abrupt, and I wasn't scared, and you know. But what happened that you know there was no freedom of speech, first of all, you know. Yes, sometimes you need to you know be
I
a
think there
little
should be responsibility
yeah.
accompanied by the
Yeah,
freedom of speech,
yeah.
right?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, it's okay to
Yes.
violate
Yeah.
the rules for the
Yeah,
sake of better.
my head of the department, what she did was that she took the picture, she took the permission from the department, and then it was allowed
Right.
to be published.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an important factor when we talk about the consent. But obviously, I think it is reduced to an individual responsibility how you want to portray that particular culture or that particular environment when we are taking the pictures of conflict areas, disaster hit areas, or the war zones, and what we are witnessing in the Palestine, the pictures that are coming from the Gaza.
Horrible and very heart-wrenching scenes, Hajra.
Very heartbreaking.
Honestly speaking, whenever I read the news on screen about Palestine, the children especially.
Oh my God!
I
you
mean,
can't see
I have kids of my own, so I relate everything with my children. That God forbid if I was there, if my kids were there in that particular place. So I think it's for all of our audiences who are watching us right now that it is very important. Not just sharing the posts over social media is sufficient to show your solidarity with the Palestinians and everyone who are suffering over there. But I believe, Hajra, that it is very important to place ourselves in their shoes and to actually feel and realize that what they are going through that whole barbaric situation.
Right, and those pictures are obviously portraying a particular situation, and they're portraying the truth, and that is definitely going to affect the public opinion. But now let's come back to our own cultural sensitivities and how to be more inclusive and truly representative of the cultural narratives that we have. Before that, we talk about more about the cultural narratives and our cultural sensitivities. We would like to say thank you to Masuma for coming here.
Thank you so
for
much.
having this wonderful conversation of women in photography. And this was a very interesting discussion. And we've also witnessing, Ali, I don't know if you had the opportunity to go, but there is a festival going on in Islamabad, the cultural festival that talks about Lok Mela festival, which is held every year, that celebrates the diversity of our country, and it is also depicting what is happening.
Well, it happens every year, Hajra. Unfortunately, this time I was unable to go to this festival, but I must say that it is truly representative of all the indigenous cultures. And diversity is, I believe, is the beauty of the culture.
That's true, that's true. And we can also witness in the visuals that puppetry is also being held, and puppetry is the folklore art, I would say, that conveys very particular messages, social messages, and it is very effective in building a particular opinion in a community.
And it reminds me of Uncle Sargam as well.
Yes, and PTV is famous for making sure that puppetry does not die.
PTV has given us some very, very fine memories.
Fine plays, fine scripts.
True.
And in the visuals we can see, again, this is puppetry, and I was very fond of it, and especially how there is this need to make sure that this dying art does not go away, is not eradicated from our land, because this is our own cultural norm, and we need to make sure that it remains alive.
I think it is a digital era as well. So, there are so many things which we need to promote over the social media as well, over all the digital platforms. For instance, you are talking about the puppetry. So, I think, I mean, in my opinion, it may not be absolutely correct, but I think the puppet shows, they can, take place over the social media platforms. And so
but that requires a lot of investment, and I think people should invest in that, and people should make out the place that depicts the puppetry as the art form. But before we wrap up our segment and before we bid farewell, we would like to announce that the Lok Mela festival will go on till the 12th. So make sure that you go there, you enjoy the customs, you enjoy the culinary cuisines, and you also enjoy the diversity of the culture and the small things that are represented there, that are being sold there. Make sure that you also support the local artists there. So until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.
Pakistan.